Hi, I'm Brian Russell, Senior Business Coach with Awake Consulting, and I'm here with our founder and coach, Glenn Gutek. Welcome back to Coaching Conversations. This is our chance to kind of pull the curtain back and let you watch essentially a live coaching conversation. Today, we're going to talk about business strategy, and we're here with really a master of business strategy. You've been coaching entrepreneurs now for 19 years,
almost 20 years.
20 years. And what are some of the key takeaways that you want to share with our folks that are watching as they think about what would it look like to work with us?
We had a conversation around goal setting, and whether they do it really well or they just do it intuitively or they do it with precision. I think most leaders and entrepreneurs have thought about what the goals here, what does this eventually look like? The piece that often gets forgotten about is what is the strategy that gets me from here to there? And it is imperative that you have some clarity on what strategy is, what it is not, and have a strategy in place that others can understand their role in that strategy so that they can execute it. So I was telling Brian, I said, one of the things that we probably should talk more about with our clients is this whole issue of strategy. So let me tell you, when I think of the word strategy, I try to break it into simple parts. A good strategy, to me, a good business has a system, right? And all systems have an input, they have a process, and they have an output. And one of the things that a good strategy needs to have is it needs to have an output measurement that it's shooting for. How much, how often, how frequently, comparing a couple of numbers, revenue compared to expenses, or the average value per client, or some of that nature. There really does need to be a metric in place that your strategy is trying to achieve, because the output measurement lets you know what the strategy is trying to achieve. The strategy is the process.
Yeah, and let me just interrupt you there, because I think this is a key piece. So let's say I'm an insurance agent. I have a team of 10, and I'm not exactly sure. I know I'm trying to sell policies, and I'm going to have certain kind of sales goals. Maybe I want to take the vacation. I want to earn enough that I get to take the trip, or maybe be awarded by my organization. So maybe that's my goal. How would you help me to figure out, okay, what are the actually outputs? What are some questions that you would ask one of your clients to help them to get to and define what that output is?
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things that when you become a rep, whether you're an insurance agent and you're repping a particular insurance carrier or multiple, you're an independent, they're offering you all kinds of incentives and reasons to sell personal kind of products, or, kind of pushing this product at a given point in time. I think as a business owner, you got to be really careful about that, because what you end up doing is marching to the beat of another drummer. So I'm a big fan of figuring out in your business, what is, I think it was Jim Collins and Good to Great included in the hedgehog conversation. What is it that drives your economic engine? What is the metric that pushes your economic engine? And for the insurance agent who has 10 employees, I still believe that what you're trying to do is generate an increase in the number of the revenue that you're getting for every household, right? And because in that number, you have your premium, which is a part of that. You also have your household count, right, that is a part of it. And so you've got two metrics that, if they're going down parallel tracks, the end result of it is it's going to have a high impact in terms of your revenue. But every business, that was just for the insurance agent.
Right.
Every business has a metric that lets you know how your systems and processes are working to produce the output that eventually leads to greater profitability.
And you find a lot of entrepreneurs that you work with are maybe misled about what their actual metric is. And so maybe some of the frustration that a business owner feels, or the stress or the need to work so many hours, may simply come down to not understanding fully the full implications, or even the potential of what their output really could be.
Yeah, I actually find that most entrepreneurs have such a bias toward action and activity that one of the things that they really don't like doing is stopping and looking at the numbers. I mean, the most simplest output measurement you can look at is gross revenue. And it is funny how often I can ask an entrepreneur, what was your gross revenue last year? And their answer will be, I don't know. And so one of the things that they find not particularly enjoyable about working with a coach, but absolutely necessary, is the coaching session can become a timeout that prompts them to look at numbers that they wouldn't rather look at. And the other thing, in a lot of small businesses we work with, they don't have a team of accountants doing a lot of number crunching. And so the end result of it is that they really are not aware of some of the lead measurements that drive the outcome that they're ultimately looking for. And so in coaching, sometimes we'll try to create that and make sure that they're aware of it. But most entrepreneurs actually don't even like the numbers. And so because they don't have a number, what their strategy becomes is a lot of frenetic activity. It's the classic, we'll throw a lot of stuff up against the wall and see what sticks. Or in other circumstances, there's somewhere you go to a convention of your peers and you're listening to the great stories of the convention of your peers and you're trying to replicate their strategy and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses or something. It's imperative for you to lead yourself, leading your team, and therefore you have to know what your measurements are so that you can set a course and a strategy that gets you where you want to go.
So once you know I'm an entrepreneur and in my business, you've sat down with me and we've actually looked at where my revenue streams are. So I know what the real output I'm shooting for. What's your next step when we're trying to craft a strategy then?
Yeah. And so I joke around a lot with a lot of clients and they say, what we need a really good mission statement. And I'll say, well, I can tell you what your mission statement is. Almost every business in America has some form of this mission statement. And that is you want to find customers who don't even know you exist and turn them into raving fans. Okay, that's your mission. You could add to this that they, pay you a profit and refer other people to you. You can add a little bit more color commentary, but essentially your mission as a business is to get people who don't even know you exist. They interact with you at their point of need. You deliver great value. They pay you profitably and they sing you praises. So as you can see in that overarching mission statement, there are strategic steps that you can begin to take. And you can work from the back end forward. And so you could sit down and say, all right, so what are the behaviors that you need to execute consistently to produce that output measurement? Or you could work from what I call left to right. And that is, okay, what are the consistent steps that you take to reach the people who don't even know you exist? So some of your strategic statements, some of your strategic actions have to relate to client development or marketing or getting your message out into the marketplace. And then some of your statements have to relate to how do you actually deliver value. And then some of your strategic actions and steps have to directly relate to how do you convert them into paying, raving fans who sing your praises. And so in the mission statement, if you break it down into a little bit, not a very granular level, but a granular level, you actually can end up crafting your mission, not your mission statement, your strategy.
And so how do you as a coach help the entrepreneur? And once they've gotten that down, so you've worked together, you've analyzed the problem. So how do you coach the client to then work into that strategy that you've actually set up? Because there's one thing having a strategy, it's another thing actually implementing that strategy. So what role does a coach play to help an entrepreneur to actually sort of knock it out of the park once they've got this plan?
Yeah, and this conversation can be a little bit controversial because one of the questions that often will go is how much of it does the owner do in isolation versus how much does the owner do in process with their team? And I land squarely on the answer yes. And the way I part of the reason is because the pace of business and the speed of business is you need a blend of both efficiency and collaboration. So the way I like to do that is I'll coach a client. Let's figure out what your end metric is, right? Then let's look at what are the consistent steps that you take that get you to that end metric. And then let's form a little bit of a step-by-step documentation of that. What's the first thing, step one, that you do to reach out to the client who doesn't know that you exist? Okay, now they know you exist. What's the thing that you do to actually sell them and have them become a client. All right, now that they're a client, what's the next thing that you consistently do to deliver value? Oh, okay, now what's the next thing that you do to help them become a raving fan? Oh, and then now that you've delivered value at the first point of need, what might be the next point of need, and how do you pivot to other product lines or services or continuing a relationship with them? So I'll ask them those kind of questions so that the owner has that step-by-step strategy in their back pocket, right? But I won't stop there. I'll actually keep it in their back pocket. And then I'll suggest, now that I've walked you through this exercise, now walk the team that's going to have to execute this strategy through this exercise. And so you can do a lunch and learn, you can do an after hours workshop, you can do, sometimes I'll actually facilitate it. And what you really are doing is not just crafting the step-by-step strategy, but you're also developing ownership of that strategy.
Yeah, that sounds like the one piece, because a lot of entrepreneurs, that trap that we talk about with our clients is it ends up being a one-person show, and you feel overwhelmed from all the work. And so that key piece, you could have the perfect strategy then, and then not empower your team. So it sounds like to me like maybe a key coaching question that maybe even folks that are watching so they can implement is, what kind of team do I need? What kind of team does my team need to become in order to actually effectively own this strategy? So it's not just me doing more work that I've set up with them because I figured out what I need to do more, which is maybe why you've contacted Awake Consult in the first place, because you're already overwhelmed. So this isn't about overwhelming the client with a more complicated strategy. This is actually making their life easier.
And one of the things that I think is really important is every team has one person, maybe two, sometimes it could be the whole team, who has convinced themselves over time that the role that they play on the team is by far the most important role. Mm-hmm. And whenever that crops up, then you run the risk of a prima donna, and you have somebody who really is starting to head toward corrective conversations. I think one of the reasons that a step-by-step strategy related to how you produce that end metric, one of the reasons why it's important to have something like that is it brings value to every role on the team. Because every player on your team now understands how their role is connected to the larger strategy. And it protects from some of this mindset that says, hey, what I do is the most important thing around here. And, none of you would have a job if I didn't do what I do. And if you really believe in the concept of team, you can't have that value permeate your culture. So yes, you want to work on your own. You understand your business better than most of the players on your team. So you may want to work on the strategy, but you also have to figure out a process by which they work on it so that they own it, not just as individuals, but they own it as a team. And you safeguard against this prima donna mentality.
What about a person that's watching that says, okay, I already have a strategy. I already know how to make my business run. What would you say that you would have to offer to a person who's actually pretty comfortable with where they are right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of our bread and butter is we love to work with people who have a curiosity around how do I overcome mediocrity. And one of the funny things about mediocrity is mediocrity can be performing at a level of excellence for too long of a period of time. Mm-hmm. And if you're not revisiting the end metric or the strategy that produces that metric, the marketplace is continuously shifting. And what may be happening and you're not aware of is that there's these little gremlins eating away at your market share, and your people aren't as fresh. You're doing well, but the problem is disaster is around the corner. I think one of the fascinating stories that we all should be aware of is the story of Kodak. Kodak in 2003 and 2004 had its best years ever, and didn't realize that it was only 3 to 5 years away from obscurity. And the reason behind that is somebody in the research and development arm of Kodak was developing the next evolution of technology that they didn't see as part of their core business. And the end result of it is nobody buys Kodak anything from a once great company. And I don't think you want to fall into that trap. And so one of the conversations that I would have with somebody in that is I think you might find this hard to believe, but mediocrity is creeping in on you and you may not be aware of it. Let's find out if that's true. Let's look at what your end metric is, and let's see if your strategy that you're trying to enact is still producing that outcome.
So in other words, if I'm an entrepreneur, even if I have a strategy that's working, so I can stay fresh and stay hungry, because there's always going to be a competitor or the new kid on the block who wants to basically take my business away from me at some level. So I have to always be slightly out of my comfort zone. And one of the things that you work with folks on strategy is to continue to reorient the strategy so you can always stay fresh. Not that you have to be exhausted every year trying to do a whole new strategy, but you're just kind of turning the dial up a little bit so that you can stay hungry.
Oh yeah. And what's really funny about that phrase is staying out of your comfort zone. It's funny how often I work with groups of people that are frustrated that other leaders and managers and directors are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, while they themselves are afraid to get out of their comfort zone. We all have them. We need to be aware of them, and we all really like them. They serve a purpose. They make us feel safe, and it's nice to feel safe. But every now and then there ought to be this portion of your life and business that is making you feel a little bit unsafe. And so that's where coaching can be really provocative.
Well, I think it's all fantastic. And I think this is all great information. And if you're interested in moving forward, we have a great tool at Awake. It's called the Entrepreneurial Leadership Profile. It can give you some preliminary data about where you are personally, also give you an assessment of your team, your leadership style, and some of the current realities of your economic numbers. And that can be the starting place of trying to discern how we here could help you. Again, I'm Brian Russell, Glenn Gutek. You can reach out to us at info@awakeconsulting.com, and it would be our privilege to serve you.